Thank you guys for being here. So this is going to be a follow-up video to my last video about the global hay shortage. So the purpose of this video is really to explain a lot of the whys. I've gotten tons of messages, I've gotten tons of emails. Like I said, I reached out to the preparedness community and said, hey, I have a moral obligation to give you this information. I don't need any credit for anything. Do your own research, and if you think it's worth telling your viewers, do a video on it. And a lot of the people I reached out to, we don't see eye to eye on preparedness, which is fine. I do have a moral obligation to get this information out there. And so far I've received tons of questions, and that's great. And a lot of the sentiments I'm getting are from people who, don't have livestock. And the question really becomes, well, does this matter to me? How does this matter? Why does this matter? And so the why matters, right? And so I want to explain why this matters to you, whether you have livestock animals or not, and what changes we can expect to see within this next year. So what I want to do first is I want to put some questions that I got from people up on the screen so we can take a look at them, and then we'll address them. So stay tuned. So as you can see, the first question is from Angry Prepper. The first questions, I should say, are from Angry Prepper. And he asked some really good questions. And in his first paragraph, he talks about canning foods. And yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think having canned foods is a good idea. Especially if you're canning your own meat, I think that's a great idea. Now, the second part of that first paragraph about, why it doesn't matter for him right now, I push back a little. I think it does matter, but we'll kind of talk about that towards the end once we've gone through the facts and once we've gone through the data. Then I'll plug in why I think that it matters, whether this shortage is going to affect you whether you have livestock or not. I mean, that's brass tacks, but we'll kind of address that towards the end. But I do want to address right now why the hay industry is disappearing, and why don't you grow your own hay, and do people have to worry about mold and diseases? Is that a really big problem when it comes to hay? So we're going to answer those, and then we'll follow up with MH swimmers questions regarding, pretty much for those, is it too late for those that don't have livestock? And if it is, what's the point? How do you recommend that we prepare? So I'll kind of lump that one in with Angry's first paragraph. We'll kind of address that together as a unit. But just to address why is the hay industry disappearing? Again, that's a good question. And for a lot of people that are not in the agricultural industry, a lot of people don't actually know how the process works. A lot of people don't know how hay works. A lot of people don't know how works in general. So I definitely understand. I understand those questions. So I would say the first thing that we have to realize when we're talking about just farming in general, but especially the hay market, we have to realize that, a lot of farmers are leaving the market because a lot of it's from retirement. The average age of a farmer is 57, 58, so it's almost 60 years old. And you got to think, a lot of these farmers started with generational property, generational land, and a lot of these people have been doing this for over 50 years. They've been out there since they were little kids, working the fields, being hay farmers, for example, growing wheat, growing corn, whatever the commodity they grow is. So a lot of these hay farmers have generational hay fields that they have been taking care of, and they've been baling for over a decade. And so I think that's really important to realize that a lot of these farmers they're tapping out. And we'll talk about a lot of reasons why, but you got to think about it. If you're 60 years old, you don't have children or kin that are going to take over the family business, so to speak. And then you have all this red tape bureaucracy. You have the costs going up on fuel and fertilizer, labor costs going up. You have all these different factors that are making it almost impossible for you to make an honest dollar. Why would you stay doing it? It comes to a point where you're like, you know what, I'm 60, 65 years old, or I'm almost 70 years old, and I've had a good run, but it's time to call it quits. Well, what are they going to do? They're going to either going to just stop altogether and keep the property, or they may sell the property and go to a nice retirement place down in Florida and live out the rest of their days, drinking pina coladas on the beach or whatever. And obviously that's tongue in cheek, but it's true. You have a lot of people that are aging out of this market. And again, I can't blame them. If you're almost 70 years old and you've been doing this for quite a few years, and you're being squeezed by the prices, you're being squeezed by the bureaucracy, you're being squeezed by, all the different factors that are happening, yeah, retirement doesn't seem so bad after all. The second thing to talk about is the operating cost. So let me go ahead and we're going to look at some equipment, just basic bare bones equipment that you're going to need in order to bale hay. So let's just take a look at these real quick. So as you can see, I mean, that's expensive pieces of equipment. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars for the tractor, the mower deck, the rakes. There are a lot that go into this. And so in order to make this profitable, you really have to have hundreds upon hundreds of acres, if not thousands of acres of farmland, and you have to have all the right equipment. And if you're just talking about a mower in general, and just keep in mind, all the pictures that I showed you and all the equipment I showed you is used. This is not brand new equipment. So for a decent tractor that's going to be able to pull your deck and your rakes and stuff like that, you're talking about, almost $500,000 just for one. And if that one goes down, well, then you're screwed. So a lot of these people have at least two. I mean, and that's if you're just running everything by yourself. If you have a big commercial operation, you probably have way bigger pieces of equipment. So when you're talking about overall price, just to be in the hay cutting business, it's a lot of money. Like I said, this is something that you would expect to see somebody that has a few hundred acres that is just running it by themselves, 100% pretty much by themselves. This is the type of equipment they're going to want to have because, again, it takes a long time. This is not something that just happens. This is not something that just happens overnight, because even after the hay gets cut, it has to be dried out before it can be baled. And so there's just a lot of different inputs that go into that. So if you're talking about looking at this brass tacks, right, you're talking about fuel prices have gone up this year exponentially, a lot more than last year. And farmers were complaining about fuel costs last year. Fertilizer, farmers were complaining about fertilizer costs last year and availability. This year, it's even worse, way worse. And then you couple that with equipment, supply chain issues. Again, if you're running into all these problems and you don't see these problems being fixed, if you're a 60-year-old farmer, yeah, you probably at this point are like, you know what? Again, retirement does not seem that bad. This is a lot of it. This is a lot of problems. The next thing to look at, Mother Nature issues, right? You have droughts, you have insect infestations, and you have all these different, and we'll talk about that kind of later, because even if you do have an insect infestation that doesn't affect hay is still going to be highly affected by that. And we'll talk about the bureaucratic red tape in a bit, but I want you to watch this. I want you to watch this clip real quick. This clip comes from the state of Oregon. Oregon is one of the highest exporters of hay. And as far as, drought issues, I mean, the state gets more rain probably than almost any other state in the union. And so if you have a place like Oregon, where, again, robust rivers, right there on the coast, tons of rain, it's known for being rainy, is having drought issues, and you're having hay shortages for the local populace there, this is an indicator that there's bigger things to come. So let's take a quick look at this video real quick.
Hey, drought and low water supplies have starved hay farms all across the Northwest, and now livestock owners are really paying the price. The owner of Mall's Hay Farm in Battleground tells Coin 6 his suppliers are charging significantly more now, and those high rates are getting passed down the chain.
Most of my suppliers have raised anywhere from $60 to $100 per ton. And with the fuel costs being as high as they are this year also, that doesn't help any.
What we're paying now for a bale of hay is double what we have paid in the past, and that's picking it out of the field, which is usually the least expensive option for us.
And we're told hay is going to seed sooner, and fewer people are choosing to grow it. Coin 6 spoke to one group working to drop off donated hay to livestock owners in Southern Oregon. More on that effort at coin.com.
And it's important to note that this video was taken. This was a video that was done last year. This was talking about 2021 problems, and so you're talking about, again, in the state of Oregon, and like I said in my last video, I mean, state of Oregon had 40.7% lower yields in 2021 than it did in previous years. And so you're talking about over half of the hay yield, them yielding half, essentially half of what they normally yield. That's huge. And you can see prices in Oregon have gone up a minimum 200%. I expect them to go up much higher all over the Pacific Northwest. I see it go up much higher this year. So again, it's one of those things where we are seeing that there are Mother Nature issues in play. There are fuel costs, fertilizer, equipment costs, equipment maintaining, the age of your average hay farmer. So all these things are going to cause a big squeeze. And again, I can't. How can I be upset with the guy who's been farming for over half a century, over 50 years he's been doing this, and now he's at the point where there's no more notches to put in the belt. There's just no more there's no more part of that belt he can tighten. That's real life. That's real life shit. So again, and when you look at who's buying up this farmland, corporate entities, governmental agencies. And you see different other countries are buying up this farmland. So, it's one of those things where when they do decide to retire and they do decide to sell, there is a corporate entity readily available to come and pick up that field or pick up that farmland. And a lot of times they're not going to keep that farmland for hay, for hay or pasture grass. They're going to use it for other agricultural purposes. So again, that's another reason why you're seeing less and less hay fields on the market. You're seeing less and less fields being hayed on the market. And the last thing to consider is the political red tape. The political red tape and bureaucracy, okay? An example of this, last year there was a fire ant quarantine, right? So not a COVID-19 quarantine, but a quarantine because of fire ants, imported fire ants. And this affected much of, southern, it's the southern part of the states. So Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, the southern part of Oklahoma. And so there were quarantines on how this hay could be moved, who could come pick it up, who they could sell to. And it's not because the fire ants were attacking the hay. The fire ants don't give a shit about the hay, but it is their ability to spread. And they see hay as a big caveat for spreading issues. In California, for example, when I was driving through not too long ago, and I was hauling livestock not too long ago, earlier this year, and they wanted to know if there was any hay on board, because if there was, we couldn't bring it with us. And so you have states like state of California that will not allow you, if you're just an average person, to bring hay into the California, because California has agricultural checkpoints and hay is a controlled item. And so it's one of those things where this is happening. This bureaucratic red tape is happening all over the country. So the fact that, for example, last year there was fire ants that were imported, had nothing to do with hay. The hay industry had nothing to do with it, but bureaucratic think tanks thought it was a good idea to quarantine the southern part of the United States of America geographically and add all these added restrictions on how hay could be moved, how it had to be stored, etc., for a fire ant issue that was caused by the corporate entities of agriculture. So again, I'll just be straight up. It's fucking bullshit. But that is what your average farmer, that is what they have to deal with. And again, I can't blame the guy who's 60 years old, who has all these different issues up against him or her have it up against them, and them being like, you know what? Yeah, let's just keep fighting through this. I don't blame them for getting out of the market. I don't blame them for I don't blame them for wanting to, have an easier life with the years they have left. I absolutely cannot. I can't blame them for that. So just to answer that question, why are there so many, farmers leaving the market? Why, especially hay farmers leaving the market? There is a whole bunch of different reasons right there. And again, they're all, I can't blame them. So there you go. That answers that question. Now, let's talk about my hayfield and let's talk about how I get my hay real quick. So stay tuned. And as always, long live the Republic. So as you can see from his question, he said, why don't you grow your own hay? And then you saw the video of my field being hayed, being baled. So I do bale. I do have somebody come out and they will hay my field, usually June, July-ish of every year. Now, I do get one cutting out of my field just because I want to get that initial cutting done. And then, you know, we're doing pasture rotation throughout the year. So for me, I do grow my own, I do get it cut, and I do store up a lot of hay in my barns. Now, the big difference from years past, at least with me, is just my operation has gotten bigger, right? I started this off as a subsistence farming, you know, just to produce enough meat for me and my family. And we were able to do that. And now we're growing up our homestead. I now have 20 plus sheep. I have 4 cows. So we are growing up, and we are now above our carrying capacity for what our field can provide, which is fine. It's not an issue to have them graze, because whenever it's peak season and there's grass growing, they're fine. They eat grass. But again, during your harsher months, yeah, the grass is not going to be growing as quick, if growing at all. And especially if you have snow on the ground, yes, you need to throw out hay for your livestock. And again, this is, you know, and without getting into all the nuances of the different kinds of hay, different qualities and stuff like that, because that does matter. But they are going to need supplemental feed during the hard months, especially if you have, you know, above your carrying capacity. And your carrying capacity, again, is going to change based upon the season. You know, if you're in spring and summer, yeah, you are at your peak as far as what your carrying capacity is. Once it starts getting to fall and the grass is not growing out as much, you can't feed as many animals. So again, I do get my field hay, but you always want to have extra hay on hand just in case something happens. You know, you always have natural disasters, you always have fires, you always have the possibility for a lot of snow. So it's important that you have that on hand. And again, in times past, hay has been affordable to where it was worth buying a ton of hay, a few metric tons of hay. It was worth buying all that hay because you were going to make it up in livestock sales. You were going to be able to make that up in what you're saving on having to go to the grocery store. So in times past, this has worked, and this is how things have been done for generations upon generations. But as we're seeing, things are changing. So it's one of those things where if I want to keep and maintain the size of the herd I have to now get creative. And again, I love being able to be a producer, right? I love being a subsistence farming. I think that's great. I love it. I'll always do it to some capacity, but I do love giving back to my community, right? I do love being able to help other people in preparedness. I get emails all the time from people that I've kind of got their feet wet, and now they got their feet and their bearings underneath them. They're wanting more and more livestock. So this is definitely an industry that's taking off, but we are seeing with this hay shortage, it could change how we look at things, and it could change things for a very long time. And so it is important that we look at that, and we look at that for what it is. So yes, to answer the question, I do grow my own hay. We do pasture rotation here. We do all of that. We do all the sustainable stuff to maximize the fields that we have. But with that being said, depending on what your carrying capacity is, you know, you probably are going to need supplemental hay. And again, it's always good to have extra hay on hand in case something happens. You know, that's the whole point of preparedness. If something happens, I want to be able to have it and use it. Or if something happens with my neighbors or whatever, it's always good to have feed on hand that you can use to take care of your animals. Because if you don't take care of your animals, they can't take care of you. So that's super important, but also a great question. And so the last question I want to address real quick is there bigger problems with mold and disease? Yes. I mean, as far as disease, not so much. I mean, hay is grass, because that's what hay is. Grass is pretty resilient. And if you have quality fields, I haven't ran into that issue yet. And I know a lot of people that haven't ran into that issue yet. Is it always possible? Sure. But again, as long as you're doing the basic minimums to keep up with the land, keep up with your pasture, as long as you're doing the bare minimums, you shouldn't run into any problems. As far as mold, it can, but hay is so easy to store. all you got to do, honestly, is keep it dry and keep it out of the sun. If you can do that, you shouldn't have any mold issues with your hay. You really shouldn't have any issues, and it could store 3 years, no problem. So, realistically, yeah, there are people every year that get mold, and I'm sure there's people every year that might have some diseased hay. But from my training, from my experience, from what I've seen generationally in this area, and from people that I know that generationally have grown in other areas, as long as you do the bare minimums, you keep the hay out of the rain, you keep it out of the sun, really no problems, really no issues. It's a great commodity that does last. So those are great questions. Now let's kind of bring this information back together and let's really talk about why this matters to you, even if you're not homesteading. So let's go back to Angry Prepper's first paragraph here, and let's talk about MH Swimmer's question, and let's really try to understand, why this matters and what we can do about it. So why does it matter, right? For those of you that are not homesteaders yet, or those of you who have no desire to be homesteaders or grow your own food, why does this hay shortage matter? Well, let me start with addressing those that have no desire or plan to ever raise animals. The real reason why this is going to affect you the most is because eventually we're going to run into what's called true cost food. And a lot of other places have already seen this, right? We know China has experienced this, Russia has experienced this, a lot of Middle Eastern countries have experienced this, Cuba has experienced this, South America has experienced this, Venezuela very recently has experienced this. And what true cost food means is you are going to expect to pay what it costs to actually produce. Here in America, we have enjoyed subsidies. We've enjoyed the ability that the government comes in and will intentionally, basically artificially inflate and deflate certain commodities, right? This is where you get the whole, them pouring milk out, because if you produce too much milk on the market, you're going to shock the market. And when you shock the market, prices are going to go down. And if prices go down too much, these farmers can't make a living. And the reason why the farmers are able to make a living in the first place is because a big government came, subsidized them, bailed them out, encouraged them outside of a capitalistic system to create milk, because this is what the government wanted. So the government wanted lots of milk. But once you get all these systems up and going and these farmers start doing what they do best and producing, well, if you produce too much, you're going to shock the system. And now all the farmers that grow milk are going to suffer the price, because the prices are going to be so low because there's so much of it there's so much out in the system. So then they tell farmers, hey, you need to dump milk so we can kind of level this out. You weren't supposed to make so much, kind of thing, right? And so we have experienced this type of agriculture that's been manipulated. And so what you're going to eventually see is you're going to see true cost, whether that's because of inflation. Think about it, 40% of all the money that has ever been made, or whatever, 60% has been made in the last 18 months, 2 years, right? So this idea that all this money is being produced, and this inflationary pricing that we're seeing, yeah, there's going to come a point where, for example, let's take Appalachia Homestead, I think the name of her channel. Let's take her approach. I think this is good, and it's easy to see. If you were wanting to buy farm-raised eggs, I mean, I've seen prices as low as $6 a dozen to her, and based upon her chicken feed inputs, she's charging people pretty much almost $1 an egg, right? So pretty much $1, dollar egg, $12 a dozen. That's a lot. That is expensive, versus somebody being able to go to the grocery store and buy factory eggs for, let's say, $4.50, $4.50 a dozen. And so what's going to happen eventually is you're going to see that these prices are eventually going to settle out, and they're going to be the same, because you're going to have to pay true price, right? When the government subsidies no longer work because either they stop subsidizing or the money is inflated to the point where it doesn't matter, you're going to have to pay true cost eventually. And so if you're not growing your own food, the only place for you to get food is either from a local producer or from governmental infrastructure. And if you think either one of them are going to give you a break because you're a nice person, you're highly mistaken. So either way, those costs are going to get thrown onto you, no matter what. Because again, I have to ask you, and you have to ask yourself the logical, honest question: where do you get your food? That's all I have to say. If that's not enough to worry you, and if that's not enough for you to realize that this shortage is going to affect you, I don't know what else to tell you. There's nothing else to say. We'll see you in a year. You know, I mean, at this point, that's what it comes down to. So yes, it's going to affect you because eventually you will pay true cost, right? We see many places in Russia, 27 to 35% ish, depending on where they live in Russia. And I'm sure it's even more inflated now since their currency has been deflated by 30%. But before this whole thing transpired, the average Russian was spending anywhere between 27 to 35% of their take home on food. In America, we spend anywhere between 10 to 15% of take home on food. Russia, before all this stuff happened, 2 years ago, was 27 to 35. In China, in really poor, afflicted areas, you're looking at 44% of take home was spent on food. And in the richer areas, you're talking about 27 to, again, similar, 35% of take home was spent on food. If you look at places in Africa, it's upwards of 60% of take home is spent just on food. So the true cost of food is going to eventually transpire. That's going to be a reality. Every country has faced it, and as long as we keep making the poor decisions that we're making, we can expect to see it as well. So again, that's one of the things that you have to consider and you have to look at. True cost. So that is to the people that have no desire to be homesteaders and plan to always depend on somebody else for their food. That's why it's going to affect you, because eventually you will have to deal with true cost. And not only true cost, but you have true cost and you have what the person is trying to make money off of. And it's very simple, if true cost, let's say true cost is $15 a pound for meat, that is completely true cost. Then you can expect to pay, maybe $17, $18 because they have to make profit, right? So if the place down the street selling it for 17, the other place across the street selling it for 18, the other place is selling it for 16, they all have the different advertisements and stuff like that. If true cost is 15, that's the minimum you can expect to pay, but you can expect to add a few dollars on top of that because again, people are going to need to make a profit somehow. So there you go. Now let's talk to the people that want or may get into homesteading in the future. For those of you that are planning to get into homesteading and raising livestock, the biggest things you're going to have to consider are going to be your startup costs. So let me just throw a few numbers at you guys. Our bottle calves, our Holstein and Black Angus crosses, those were $30 to $50 a piece to get started, right? You can't, and obviously I got that. I know a lot of people that run dairies, are really good friends with them. And so, yeah, I definitely got the farmer discount there, but even trying to get a farmer discount today, there's no way I can touch them for that much. We're talking about hundreds. They're going for hundreds of dollars now, and that's to be expected. Prices of everything are going up, and my paycheck didn't just automatically increase with this inflation, just like I'm sure yours didn't either. So your overall inputs and your overall cost just to buy the animals, that's going to be a pretty penny. When we first started here getting animals, I was able to go and just pick up the animals I wanted to. I wasn't able to buy a whole entire flock, but, every month I could pick up a few more animals. It was not that big of a deal because they were not that expensive. Now you're probably going to have to save for months and months and months and invest just to get the animals. And that's not including the price of all the equipment that you're going to need. That is not including the cost of fencing. That's not going to include the cost of, just all the different factors, food, feed, all that stuff. So these are all things you have to consider, right? Because it's not just going and picking up a few sheep. It's you need to have a place that you need to have fencing. You need to have the sheep. Do you have the mineral blocks? Do you have a trough for them to drink water? Do you have something that was going to hold hay if you needed to hold hay? Do you have all the husbandry items that you're going to need? These are all things that you want to consider, right? What happens if it gets a cut or a scratch or something? Do you have iodine? These are all different things that you want to consider. And all those have a high price. The prices are going up exponentially. So for those of you wanting to get into it, just realize that you're going to probably want to start saving now. If you don't have a livestock fund, you're probably going to want to get one, because if you don't, unless you just make really good money, I just don't see how it's going to be affordable to the average person. Now, I know I make considerably less than what the average person in America makes, but even still, I mean, I can't imagine that somebody who's never done this, who does not have the networking in place, I just don't know how you would be able to afford it, right? $25, $26 dollar bales, you know, for 2-string bales, 40-pound bales. It's going to be a very difficult transition. So, you know, I hope, and it seems like Angry Prepper has, he said he has plans and everything set up. So I hope that he has somebody, essentially, from what it sounds like, is either he's just really super confident, which he obviously is. So either he just, you know, thinks that things are just going to rebound and go back to normal, or he literally has somebody that's going to, you know, show him the ropes step by step. And I hope that's the case. I hope he has somebody that's going to show him the ropes step by step and immediately immerse him in the agricultural community, where he's going to be able just to, you know, have these networks, you know, somebody saying, hey, this is my hey guy, this is Angry, you know, he's my friend, he's cool, you should give him, you know, you should treat him right. So unless he has somebody going around for every part of agriculture that he's planning on investing in, it's going to be tough, you know. And I'm not trying to, you know, I want to be honest with you guys. You know, it's doable. You can definitely do it, but realistically, again, for those of you that are thinking about getting into it, it's going to be rough, because it's going to be expensive, and I don't see these prices turning around. I don't see it. There's nothing. There's no indicators, and there's no math, and there's no pizza legislation. There's nothing I can point to that's going to be like, oh yeah, so things are going to rebound because of this, and nobody's able to articulate that. So I think a lot of people are just on the hopium that things are going to get better. You know, we just, you know, essentially it's praying for a miracle, and yes, miracles can happen, and I hope they do. But based upon what's actionable and what I can see, the prices are not going to come down. So that's why it's so concerning to those of you that are wanting to get into this, because like I said in my last video, a lot of people are already tapped out of the market. You're already priced out of the market, because again, you know, just to feed, you know, if you're looking about what it's going to take, what's it going to take to feed your family, you know, just a conservative estimate, you know, you're probably going to need around a herd of 10 sheep. Realistically, if you have a family of 4 and you guys, you know, and that's just, you know, 2 kids, mom and dad, or however makeup you want to make up that family of 4 or 5, or however, you know, you're going to need probably 10 sheep. You're going to need 9 ewes and 1 ram. And you're really going to need them breeding constantly. And the cost of that for hay for just the rough season, that's going to be considerable. You know, that's, you know, $4,200-$4,300 on the low end. You know, essentially it's a mortgage payment each month just to keep them fed during the rough season. So, and that's if you're buying just through the feed store wholesale. So again, it's important. Have a plan, have solutions. And so that's what I want to talk about next. I want to talk about what the solutions are. And yes, there are solutions. They just may not be in the form that you're expecting to see them in. So let's talk about our solutions.
Hooey! Hooey! There we go, guys. Make those dozen eggs for me, brothers and sisters. And in short work, they're doing what they are created to do. I love the sounds of the animals. I love being out here. I'm so blessed. A whole litter of rabbits in here. There's 11 baby rabbits in here, and I feed them the same way I feed my sheep, and that's with high quality pasture. That's what I do. I take a big bag of pasture that I mow real quick, throw it in there. It's about 15 pounds of high quality pasture, so that's a little over a pound each. I throw it in there, and then if it's all chumped down in a couple hours, I go, mow up another quick bag of pasture, throw it in there. It's so great because it's literally free. One rabbit at 8 weeks old will give me about 5 pounds of high quality meat. So just to give you a size difference here, they grow quick. These rabbits are about just at 4 weeks old. This rabbit right here is about 11 weeks old. He's going to be one of our new breeding stock. They grow quick. That's 1 litter of rabbits. I have 7 breeding does. You can do the math on that. Well, I hope this was helpful for you guys. And as always, guys, long live the Republic.
Some coffee real quick. I really do like coffee. So you saw two of those videos. Those are great solutions. And I'm going to link those videos in the description box below so you guys can take a look at those. But there is a way to grow food for free. And there is a way to look at this through a sustainability lens that works. With that being said, though, you're going to have to change how you look at food, right? Because realistically, let's just be honest. And we got to stick with the honesty just because it'll settle the score. You can only look at food really 3 ways, okay? In a grid down, shit hits the fan situation, if you're either going to be a person that depends on themselves and their communities or depends on infrastructure. That's the only thing. And maybe you might be able to do a little bit of both, but to some regard, that is the landscape in which that you're going to have to adjust and play in. So you're going to have those people that go and depend on the government dole for their food, and they're going to be eating junk food, high calorie, low nutrient food, right? Because that's what you're going to be supplied with. You're going to have the person that is, kind of sort of in the middle. They're going to spend lots and lots of money on trying to procure the stuff that they want through infrastructure, unfortunately, but that's what it will be. People that are more well off might be able to afford that a little more. And then you're going to have people like myself that are going to depend on community and themselves, and we're going to eat seasonally. Okay. So we're going to eat food when it's in season, and when it's not in season, we have the stuff that we stored up, and outside of that, we'll just have to wait till next season. Kind of like the way our forefathers have eaten for as long as human beings have been around. And so when we're looking at food honestly, and we're looking at it from a realistic standpoint, you can definitely grow food. But what a lot of people don't realize is when we're having this conversation, people see food as cattle, right? They see it as sheep, goats. Like, that is what people think of food. And again, it is food. And trust me, I love having Black Angus steak, backstrap, ground beef whenever I want. Trust me, I like having, Katanen lamb chops whenever I want. Trust me, I like having roasted duck and smoked pit chicken and smoked this and smoked that whenever I want. It's really nice. I love the fact that I raise rabbits and I can have a rabbit whenever I want, or I can feed Kova and my Mastiffs rabbits whenever they want. It's nice that I can do that, but I realize not everybody is at that level. And so it's really important to realize that when you're looking at food, there are a lot of other options. European nations, South America, if you look at any depressed society, rabbits have literally been encouraged for people to grow. After World War II, during World War II, you had a lot of European nations that were like, hey, you should grow rabbits because rabbits are easy to grow and they will save your life. This is just the reality that we find ourselves. And as far as equipment and stuff, that's what's great about chickens. That's what's great about rabbits. I think those two combined will definitely be a powerhouse that you can survive on, because with rabbits, like you saw, I literally take the only piece of baling equipment you need, right? You can go to the store, you can buy an electric lawnmower, and that is your mower deck, that is your baler, that is your hay conditioner, all in one, right? And you can literally bag grass, you can dump grass directly into their hutch. Boom. There you have it. Nothing else, 50 pounds of meat every 8 weeks. It's not a bad gig. Not a bad gig at all. And so, again, there are solutions. It's just going to require you to look at things differently. A lot of people cannot imagine eating a rabbit. And I get that. And that's fine. and I'm not asking you to. But, you know, for those of you wanting to get into homesteading, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, you guys know what I produce. You guys know what I produce, how I produce it. And I can tell you, rabbits have been consistently my best seller. Hands down, consistently my best seller. So rabbits are huge. They have bought me this couch you see in the back, bought with rabbit sales, okay? My homesteading activities paid for by rabbits. All my sheep and my cows paid for by rabbits. So as far as a cash crop goes, rabbits are a very good way to get started. They're a great way to sustainably grow, and they can make you spending money. They can give you prepping money. So it's one of those things where I highly consider you to at least think about it, right? Especially if you're not trying to get into big livestock or you think it might be a while. If you have the space just for a couple rabbits, don't even breed them. Don't dispatch them, nothing. Keep them as pets. Just have them. If for nothing else, they're great fertilizer. But guess what? As soon as something happens and you are forced into a position where you're like, okay, well, we can no longer depend on it. Like it's happening. It's happening now. Guess what? You could ramp up food production as quickly within a few months. So you can be ramped up and just balls to the wall, feeding you, your family, and your community. Again, everybody has their thing. I know they're cute, they're cuddly, all that stuff, but it is an option outside of what people atypically think of livestock and what people atypically think of, you know, growing food, raising animals. So something to think about, food for thought. You know, they're great sellers. I can sell a rabbit $50 a day, every day, no problem. I mean, people will buy it. So it's nothing. And I live in a very depressed area, economically speaking. And again, I can offload them for $50 a piece without any issues. So if you were living in a more densely populated area, I can only imagine the returns that you would have. So again, something to keep in mind. It's a great way to get started. It's a great way to meet people. It's a great way to meet hay producers. It's a great way to meet people in other livestock communities. It's a great way to venture out there into your 4-H community. So again, that's my advice. That's my info for you guys. I hope this video was helpful for you guys. Again, I love your questions. If you have any questions, please leave in the comment section below. Let's have a conversation. If you look in the description box below, I'm going to have a lot of links to different things that I think may be helpful for you guys. So please take a look at it. Again, thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you for taking this seriously. And again, be prepared, guys, because this is going to be a tough year for food. So stay prepared as always, guys. Long live the Republic.